good afternoon, good morning. If you're like Peggy out there on the West Coast, and probably everywhere in between, or if you're overseas, good evening. Um, yeah, give us a minute. We got a full house today because obviously I'm sure there's some I'm sure there's some stragglers, but for the most part, we know we're talking to class 2025 folks that are well in it, that are in the thick of it at the moment. Maybe got some acceptances already. Hopefully, I mean that's why a lot of this time of year is really exciting, right? Because we're in somewhere. We probably don't love the financial kind of deal that we're looking at, and that's obviously what we're here to talk about today. But we're in, baby. So
Or it's
that's
good and it can even
right.
get better.
That's right. So tell us. I mean, we always like to know it, and look at Peggy. We
People are already doing it. They're
we got
already
some
doing it. You
groupies.
didn't even have to ask.
We got some groupies on here. Tell us where you're at, and you know what? Tell us too, what school have we got into, or we're trying to get a better deal here. If you know, if you have that yet, I'm sure a ton of you are still waiting too. But if you know, okay, we got Wesleyan, we got Butler, we got ASU, um, Tulane, right? So good mix of schools here.
Seton
Loyola
Hall.
down in
JMU,
Maryland,
go Dukes.
Mish,
Love
Miami.
it.
Cuse. I think Cuse is actually we got a little case study on
Yeah,
Syracuse
we do. We
specifically
do.
today. So um yeah, so and this is great. I appreciate all the banter there, all the chatter, and we'll keep it going. But look at we do have a ton of content today because we had a break-in, right? You guys may have been seeing a lot of these headlines with everything that's going on with Doge and the Department of Education specifically. Um, there's some major changes, and some of them, some dominoes are already have fallen or are falling as we speak, and then we're anticipating some downstream stuff that's going to impact you all. I don't think it's all going to be bad by any stretch, right? If you've been paying attention to kind of our commentary here, I just lead with, this is not one of these if it ain't broke, don't fix it situations here. I don't think anybody's psyched about, higher education in the United States right now, at least from a financial standpoint. So some changes welcome, but there's some things that we're not in love with, and our job is to educate you guys so you can be in the driver's seat here. And specifically around borrowing this year, that's where I think there's going to be some major disruption. And again, we've already seen some of these dominoes fall. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit because guess what? We got to make these decisions really soon here. So we're going to start planting these seeds with you all. Little sneak preview here. Quick introductions. I'm Matt Carpenter, one of the founders at College A Pro. I'm at our office here just north of Boston and Salem, Mass. We got Peggy on the opposite coast out there in Seattle, the fairy godmother of financial aid, also the budget queen, Peggy. I don't know if I
I
can let
named
that.
myself that on
You
the
named
podcast, so
yourself, and
I'm stuck with it
I
now.
might have. I don't know if I can let that go. Originally a Jersey gal, and speaking of Jersey, that's where Kevin Murphy's at right now, joining us. Now, Murph, for the most part, he's going to be living in the Q&A. This is who you want to be asking questions to when it comes to appeals. He's got over $1 million this year in successful appeals, which is pretty amazing. Just him at a couple dozen colleges already, and we're early here. He's a very experienced in this kind of space of guiding families through this financial aid process and specifically appeals. So I said, Murph, come join us, block the hour, and get in the Q&A, answer as many questions as you can. Now, look at you guys are all going to be very tempted to say, I get this offer from WPI. How do I do better, Murph? We're not going to be able to answer those family specific questions here. So he's probably going to say, book some time with me. You'll see at the end that we're going to offer a free 15 minutes with Murph. If you want to talk about your family situation, whole way in on it and say, do we think we can help you? What does that look like if we get involved? Or guess what? You're probably better off going on your own. Here's what that looks like. Right. So, again, any questions that are too granular, we're probably gonna have to say, look at grab some time on our calendar. And
Yeah, and so please put your questions in the Q&A for Murph as opposed to the chat. We'll remind you. You can be anonymous if you want, but just keep them in there because I already see some stuff hitting up in the chat. So just paste that over. That's where he's going to live for the hour. And also, this is being recorded. That's the most common question. So if you get distracted, you want to share it with family members, you're all good. This
yep.
is being recorded. So let me kick this off because we got a lot to cover. As Matt shared, he is one of the founders here at College A Pro. And this truly is this bottom line, this empowering families to shop smarter for college. That's what gets us all out of bed. And that's why we're here today. So there are your presenters. Everybody should have received an email. I know a lot of you have been around the block, so you are probably already in the software. But if you got an email and you realize, hey, I haven't done that, set up your MyCap account. Matt will put a link in the chat that takes you directly to the page. Click Get Started for free. Create a username and password. There's a few onboarding questions. If you're not sure about all the answers, that's okay. Do your best because you can go in and update it under the profile tab once you're in there. So don't get stressed about that. You might be thinking, well, my kids, I'm in the almost home stretch. Why would I do this? We are taking you through this whole journey. There's a big appeals piece in the software where you can upload awards. We'll tell you if it's a good award. We'll tell you if you should appeal. We'll translate the award so you know what all the buckets are. Hugely helpful. And then we've got information about loans in there. And we also have what we call our first year view where you can mess with it and maybe there's more help. Maybe you can change the amount of spending and you can go in there and play around with that and maybe be more funded through your own funds. So my point is this takes you all the way through when you're done and making a decision. It's not just, sophomores and juniors that are building a list. So definitely get in there and take care of that. So super high level. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, already know this, but this is high level financial aid. All these schools are discounting, and Matt's talking about some of the changes. We'll touch on that, how that might affect loans in a minute or a few minutes. But all these colleges, all the stuff you're hearing and all the craziness, they are going to continue to discount. And they do it in one of these three ways. The need-based grants, and I know some of you are already writing in the chat, you're already seeing this on award letters. Need-based grants, merit-based scholarships, loans and work study, the self-help. So rest assured this will continue. Might look a little different. Names of scholarships, things like that might change, how they do it, but they're not going to all of a sudden say, oh, well, everybody's got to pay full price. That's just never going to happen. So this is the name of the game. You are in the stage where you probably, hopefully, are getting some discounts, and then you're going to say, we'd like more discounts, and this is why. So that's part of what we're going to talk about. So,
Thank you. Let me bust
actually,
in
yeah,
here.
let you jump in before I keep going because I was going Mach 10 here.
And just a reminder, everybody, we'll have to give you a couple of reminders, especially those that weren't on right at the top. Put all your questions in Q&A. So if you put a question in the chat, copy and paste it, put it in the Q&A, because that's where Murph will be living here. So look, I shared this link. I will share it again. If you haven't created your MyCap account, you have to. Okay. Because this is where, well, I'll share it again after. Okay. And Peggy, if you want to grab it from the Slack, seems to be up. It's pinned in our webinar events channel. If you want to share it,
The
but
MyCap link? What
yeah,
link are you talking about?
yep, the MyCap link, unique MyCap link. So
All right, I'll go grab it.
if you guys have not created your account yet, you should. And here's why, right? Number one, you want to get a gut check in terms of like, okay, based on the colleges that you're applying to, right? And you can put them all in here. What do we think based on your family's profile and how they say that they do business? What are they going to offer you? Okay. So if you're still waiting on award, you can take the guesswork out of that, right? But as you get these awards in, what you want to do, like Peg mentioned, you want to upload them here. Okay. So I'm going to upload, Boston University. Okay. I get accepted into Boston University. And, I'm going to take a picture of that with a JPEG, PDF, whatever, save that award. Okay. And when I do that, what we are going to do is number one, we're going to translate it, but then we're going to tell you, did you get a good deal? Okay. What is the likelihood that you can appeal successfully, at this college, whatever college it is, right? And if they under awarded you, we'll tell you by how much, right? So you have a framework in terms of like, okay, I'm going to go back, to BU or whoever it happens to be and ask for a specific amount. you have some ammunition, right, with that. We'll also just, let's say you even got a fair award, but I live in a little city called Beverly, Mass, north of Boston, right? We got a really cool private college in Beverly called Endicott College. Um, this is a private school that uses the federal methodology. By nature of that business model for a college, usually if you appeal with any level of sophistication, you're going to get some more money. So we'll flag that too. Like this is a school that's worth appealing to. Now, sometimes we'll say this is a good award. Okay, this is what we would expect for a family that again, with your profile and the particular college that we're talking about. It doesn't mean don't appeal, but at least we're calibrating expectations. Okay, obviously we're going to spend some time. Peggy's gonna take over here next, talking about private scholarships. This will be one of the slides, but just so you understand, another reason to make sure you set up your accounts here, right? But when we're talking about private scholarships, we got just about every private scholarship in the country baked into our database here, $9.1 billion or whatever it is. Peggy will talk about the first place to look for scholarships, but the second place is going to be within your CAP platform. And so once we go within this, how I like to coach it is after you look locally, then we kind of zoom out geographically. And so we want to look at the state level, right? So if I'm a resident of Georgia, okay, I can put that state in there and hit search, and it's going to show me every single scholarship that I can apply for just because I am a resident of the state of Georgia, right? And it's worth going through here to say, okay, a couple of these, I'm a female pursuing business. Okay, that's interesting. And I'm a Georgia resident. Let me try for that. And then after that, when we talk about zooming out geographically and we want to look at the national level, I think it makes sense to look at what you're thinking about studying. Even if you have any, a rough idea. So obviously this isn't a rough idea, but if you want to go be a CPA, I can just look up, hey, I want to go be an accountant, and here's all different scholarships just for students that are thinking about pursuing a degree in accounting. Right. So again, take advantage of this. You have access to it. It's free. And again, Peggy will hit on it in the slideshow in a second here. But that's a great resource for you all.
All right, let me share my screen again here. All right, so let's talk private scholarships. Who, what, when, and how. So as far as who's owning this, it's usually the student, right? I would say definitely you can repurpose essays because private scholarships are going to have applications and essays. So many times you can repurpose or tweak essays. When are you applying? It's now. It's now. Like usually, as the slide says,
Sorry, Peggy.
December to March.
You got that kind of weird rendering again where it's showing like as if you're not in presentation mode. You know what I'm saying?
I am. I don't. I am in presentation
Oh,
mode, but it's hold on. Let me see. Yeah, like
and it's not. I don't think it's a huge deal. It's readable, just a little bit smaller. And
optimize for best appearance. Click that. So let's see if this, yeah, it's Zoom. It's not, is that still the same?
yeah, but don't worry about it. There you go. There you go. Just popped. It just.
It's the tech thing again.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let me move on here. All right. So now's the time. Now's the time to be doing this. Okay. So yeah, it's game time. What can you realistically expect? This is really different from merit scholarships. Typically, merit scholarships are for all 4 years. It's lovely. Not private scholarships. There's a few, wonderful ones out there. But most of them, it's a side hustle. You're going to be doing this every year. And as we're just making an average on here, to get $1,000 to $3,000 might be 10 hours of work. And some families will say, hey, I'll go search because you're super busy with keeping your grades up and your activities or whatever. And then you can concentrate on the essays once I find them. That's kind of a family decision. There's deadlines just like everything else. So that's a really big difference about private scholarships. It's an ongoing all 4 years process. So biggest tip, and I can say this from personal experience with my kids, have your child go into the counseling office at your high school and say, hey, are there any local scholarships? Usually, like Windermere and in my town, entities like that are trying to pay it forward, support local kids. There might be scholarships. A lot of kids don't apply for them, they're less competitive. There again, it might be $500, it might be $1,000, and it's usually for freshman year. So now's the time to go in and do this, because they're going to have a deadline, and then they're going to make a decision, and then usually they'll have some sort of awarding deal later senior year. So that's the best place to start locally. We already talked about get in the software. Matt showed you that. You don't need to do this QR code. Use the code that's in the chat that I popped in there. That's unique to this webinar. Another tip when you're doing this, have your child create like a professional email, but a separate email, because you might be getting, and when you're in our software, you're not going to get spammed. We're not sharing your email address. But if you end up going to other sites, your child's going to most likely get bombarded. So make sure it's professional, and make sure they're checking it. I know email is kind of archaic for kids. My kids are 31, and that's the last place they check. But in this whole process, they need to be checking email. And just like anything, this requires organization. This whole process requires organization. So if you're going to be committed to this and say, hey, this is part of our college funding strategy, sit down with your child, decide, are you going to do this? Is it 2 to 3 hours a week? Who's doing which parts? There are underclassmen scholarships. I don't think we have barely any parents on here. We might have parents that have 26, 27 kids. I know you're on here for your 25s. So as I said earlier, it's game time. You want to be organized, track all these scholarships in one place. Matt always kids me that I have paper copies of stuff, but it's not a bad thing. Or scan it, make sure you got some sort of soft copy. Don't just send something off and you don't, in case it doesn't make it. You want to just kind of cover your what on that. Complete financial aid applications. You might be saying, well, what does that have to do with private scholarships? A lot of private scholarships are going to say there needs to be a FAFSA. It just is what it is. It's one of the many reasons to submit the FAFSA. I think most of you, we don't need to go into that spiel right now. I think most of you have done it. That's perfect. That allows private scholarships to be in your world and be able to pursue them. And sometimes CSS profile is part of it too. Some private scholarships will say merit and need. If you are not a need family, I wouldn't pursue a private scholarship that says they look at both, because if you're a betting person, they're probably going to give that, even if your child has the same merit profile as another child, that kid has need, they're probably going to get the private scholarship. So try and use your time in the most productive way to get the most bang for your buck. This is a question we always get when we talk about private scholarships, and it's a great one. This is something that happens. It's called scholarship displacement. So if you or your child does a great job, you find some scholarships, more often than not, they don't just send a check to the student. You can ask for that, absolutely. But a lot of times they say, where are you going to college? Okay, you're going to BU. We're going to send it there. And they might say, do it half each semester, or they might just send it. Then the college posts it to your child's account, and it cuts the cost of college, obviously. If your child is getting a need-based package, a lot of need-based grants, and they're meeting what they think is 100% of your need, the colleges can say, oh, you have this, what they call outside resource, so now we can cut back on our package. This is typically what happens. People get irritated. I get it. It should be, you did all this work, your child did all this work, that should cut into your student aid index. But in practice, it rarely does. It rarely impacts merit-based scholarships. I've never seen it. We had one mom or a professional on one of our webinars with Matt and myself where, she put in the chat, oh, that happened once, where a merit, not common. It's usually need-based grant. So just realize this is a thing, and you need to understand the offer you have. Is this a school that meets 100% of need? And are we getting mostly grants? Because if a big scholarship comes in, it might save the college a little money, and not you. But typically, it's a good thing, and there isn't displacement because there's a gap there that college isn't meeting 100% of need, and so it'll help. But we just always want to have you fully aware that this is a phenomenon. It happens. Okay. So now we're going to get into the appeal process. So I will turn it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, shifting gears here, and we're going to take our time with this because it's there's a few things to talk about, right? And obviously, you can see these kind of best practices on the slide behind me, but there's I want to talk through the process a little bit, and something that if you followed along with us, arguably the thing we repeat more than anything else is it depends on the college, it depends on the situation. That's not us giving a lazy, dismissive answer. That's the truth. And you hear us say all the time, these colleges are they're private businesses and they each run their businesses differently. The onus is on us to figure out, well, if I'm applying to a college or appealing to a college, how do they run their business, right? What are the levers that I need to pull at this particular college to have a successful outcome? Right. And so the appeal process works very much that way. And some of you guys may have already experienced this, right? Maybe you've appealed before and maybe you appealed at two different schools, completely different experience, right? If you want to appeal for additional need-based financial aid at UPenn, they basically make it harder than the actual financial aid application process. It's like you're doing your CSS profile, all over again. Is that by design? You better believe it, right? A lot of colleges want to make a deterrent and make it really challenging to appeal. So you go, you know what are the chances I'm going to get anything anyways? Never mind. Throw your hands in the air, guaranteeing that you're not getting anything, right? It's a strategy, okay? Others completely different, very almost like blasé, like, okay, yep, send us a letter. We'll take a look as a committee and we'll get back. So we need to understand how the colleges that or the college that we're trying to get more money out of, how do they work, right? And then we need to think about, well, what type of appeal is it, right? Because basically there's two types of appeal. There's a need-based appeal, there's a merit-based appeal, right? And so kind of going back to Peg's first slide there, if it's a merit-based appeal, that means we're talking about maybe we didn't get offered a merit-based scholarship and we want to have that reevaluated. Or maybe we did get offered a merit-based scholarship and we want to see if we can do better, right? And I saw a question, we get this question all the time. Can we appeal merit? 100%, right? Something that we do all the time. This year has been no different. We've had a ton of success there. But the tactic and the strategy and the who with that appeal changes. What do I mean by that? Number one, we have to know who are we talking to at that college, right? It's the admissions office and it's the admissions counselors that we're talking to, okay, as opposed to the need-based appeal, which I'll talk about in a second. Generally speaking, it makes sense for the student to be the loudest voice in the room there if we're talking about a merit-based appeal. Whereas if it's a need-based appeal, that means we're talking the financial aid office. And again, generally speaking, it makes sense for the parents to be the loudest voice in the room, right? We're talking about maybe a change in income, a change in marital status. We want to challenge how they valued our business. Because guess what? If you're a business owner, I promise you, they valued it in a different way than you presented it, a different way than it showed up on your tax returns, a different way than if you were to actually sell your business tomorrow. I promise you. And they are much tougher than the IRS in terms of the expenses that they allow. Okay, the IRS might have said no problem with different expenses that they allow. These colleges are much tougher. Okay, when it comes to that. So it makes sense for conversations like this, or maybe we're challenging them because they're one of these schools that considers our home equity fair game, right? And that's something we want to make sure that we lean into. It makes sense that those conversations are happening, from the parent or parents to these financial aid offices. Okay. Another thing to think about is timing, right? We get the question all the time: should I appeal now? Should I wait? It depends, right? It depends. It depends on the college. It depends on the situation. Now, obviously, if we've been accepted ED or ED2, something like this, where there's a constricted timeline, well, we can't use other colleges as leverage, right? If it's ED, and we have usually a smaller window in which we can appeal. So now's the time. For other colleges, sometimes urgency makes sense as well. Like, let's get it while the getting's good. Let's make sure that these colleges still have enough money to dish out here. Let's go right now. Other times it makes sense to pause, right? It makes sense to wait to say, hey, look, we're going to sit around and wait for a better competing offer, right? From to use as leverage, right? So that's when that's what I mean when I say every situation is different, every college is different, and you guys are going to talk to Murph or some other folks on our team, right? Probably plenty of folks on our team, and you're going to see that there's just a different strategy again for everybody. There isn't a kind of a universal catch-all here. Okay, now let's just kind of unpack a couple of these bullet points here. Tell your story, right? This is especially important when we talk about, I think, need-based financial aid, or it's less. It's overlooked, I would say, right? With need-based financial aid, usually we're trying to manipulate numbers, but we can't forget that human kind of element, right? These guys have heard me say this, but Ryan Callahan, who's a member of our team, he's the director of financial aid at Harvard Medical School, right? He was at MIT before that, Boston College before that. I always make fun of him. He's a robot, right? He's a computer, basically, right? And I can say that because he's a buddy, and I say that when he's presenting with us. But I think he's fairly representative of a lot of these financial aid folks that are just pretty stoic and numbers people. But he'll even say, he's self-aware. He knows that that's who he is. And again, a lot of his colleagues kind of share that. I don't know, personality, I guess. But he says it always kind of rattles me when I hear from a family that says, "Look, at the best day of our lives was when we got accepted. The worst day was 2 weeks later when we got the financial offer." Right? And just makes it immediately human, right? Which is what we want to do. We want to make it easy on these financial aid counselors. We want to spoon feed them data. That's why this is not universal, but oftentimes we're asking for a specific amount of money. Don't just say, I want more money. Okay. Again, sometimes that is the correct strategy, but more often than not, we're using a specific number, and that's got to be tied to something, right? We need to support that. And again, of course, we don't want to undershoot ourselves when we could get more, but we don't want to ask for such a number that our appeal gets completely dismissed altogether, right? Which is a thing. And of course, we want to have supporting documentation. Again, student and or parent involved is oftentimes predicated on how we are appealing, and obviously the specific college. Good old fashioned persistence, right? Now, this doesn't mean being a jerk, right? Ryan and Josh and JP and Mike Kinderman, these guys on our team that work in financial aid, they'll all say that during these appeals, if somebody's a jerk, they're going, I don't want to work with these people for 4 years, right? Like, I don't, why am I going to invite these guys onto our campus and have to do this to myself, right, for the next 4 years? So yes, be persistent, but keep it polite, right? What is it? Sugar works better than vinegar, or something to that extent. All right, Peggy, I think you can go to the next slide here. And I'll just show you, this is from this year, and this is the initial award from Boston University, right, where we got essentially nothing. $3,500 in federal direct student loans that we're entitled to because we completed the FAFSA. As a matter of fact, it's we could have 5,500. And the end result of the appeal, we got another, what was it here, Peggy? You can show it. Does it say another, $45,000 essentially. So $180,000. Well, there you go. $51,000, $200,000 over the course of 4 years. So, and I think, Murph, this was your appeal. You want to give a little bit to the extent you can in terms of X's and O's here. Any color you want to add to it?
Yeah. By the way, tons of great questions in the chat. I am trying to keep up, so bear
Yeah,
with.
busy.
But yeah. So this was an appeal that we did. Family reached out to us at the beginning of January. We got this done really, really quick. They had some unusual circumstances, right? So a little bit of a change in income. They had rental properties too, and the rental properties plus the change in income were the two main reasons that we used as part of the appeal. And in the end, it looks like both the change in income and the rental properties are what caused the increase in aid.
And was this one of the ones, am I thinking a different one, where at first they said no, or they came back with one offer and then you guys doubled back, or am I?
Yeah, so that first up top, the 28.8, that was what they came back first. And
Okay.
it didn't feel like enough based on the circumstances that we had outlined in the appeal. So what we did was we went back. This time we escalated things. And when we went back and escalated things, they came back with that extra almost 16,000. I just did another appeal for Boston University the other day, and same thing happened where first appeal they flat out denied additional aid. Second appeal they came back with 25,400.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had something similar at Vassar last week. It wasn't those gaudy numbers, but I think it was like 10K more, something like that. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Merv. And to me, this is another good example of like these colleges are making interpretations, right? Yes, there's calculators and things like this, and like, but there is an insane amount of subjectivity that's going on here. So that's where we want to make sure that we challenge them, and that's where I'm saying, even if you guys don't decide to engage with us, to help with your appeals, use the platform because Murph's got a ton of experience, right? But if you don't, okay, you want to say, okay, if these are the numbers, this is what I should be getting for BU. So yes, they came back with $28,000. That's great, but we're still showing that you should get another 15,000 more, right? Which was the case here, which, again, we eventually got.
Yeah, that's where it's super important to understand what you should be getting because the colleges are banking on that you don't really know, right? And then to Murph's point, they come back with 29,000. That's a lot of money, right? But he's like, nope, we're still going to go back again in the right way and ask for more. So,
Yeah, and let me thank you for this question. That again, please, guys, just another reminder: put all your questions in the Q&A, not the chat. That's where Murph and Peg and myself are focused, and Murph will get in there to give you some backup in a second here. But um, the question is,
let me do this one because he sent it all to me, or Murph, you can do, well, I think I did a pretty good job of, he sent me a very detailed. So this is another one of his family. So this is the merit-based appeal. So basically the student received no merit. So they wrote back and they know because they're in the software, there's merit aid at this school. It's not like one of the Ivies that doesn't give out merit. And so they sent back, they appealed, highlighting the strong academics of the student that were relevant for, it was Syracuse, right? Leadership experience, extracurricular, work commitments, community service, also leveraged competitive offers. So kind of hit all the different pieces and just basically said, we expected some merit aid, and MyCap is a software. They knew, they were in the know, and they came back with 5,000 a year. That's guaranteed for 4 years. So that's a $20,000 savings for those parents. It's just huge, right? So a merit is lovely in that way. It's not getting reassessed every year like need-based aid. So this was an appeal to the Office of Admissions, like Matt was talking about, because it's a merit-based appeal. So
this was Syracuse, I want to say, right, Peggy?
yeah, Syracuse. Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, okay, I didn't catch that. Yeah, and the question is, should we accept the ED offer and then appeal? No. Okay, if you can, don't sign that dotted line and submit your deposit. You will lose leverage. It doesn't mean it's dead. You can still do it. We've still been successful, but make no mistake about it. When that appeal committee is around the table looking at your appeal, they always say, "Did they put down their deposit yet?" Right? And
And you
accept.
can ask for an extension. I've done that a lot with families. Ask for another couple weeks
Yeah.
before
Yep.
you have to say yay or nay. So.
And you'll get mixed results there, right? I've seen a lot of people say, "No, that's the deal." But at least ask for that extension, and truthfully, that's kind of the first thing that you're doing to create some leverage. Say, "Hey, we can't sign this until we've gone through the appeal process," right? That's kind of your first step in creating some leverage. So these are just a couple of schools with from this season with a couple different kind of before and after appeals. So you can see obviously some huge ones. Again, those usually there's a good reason we can point to. When you see the kind of these massive numbers, but again, even these quote unquote smaller ones, when we're talking about another 10 grand, that's 40 grand tax free, right? I mean, so when we're talking about 5 grand, that's 20 grand tax free. And again, this is just a kind of a small sample size of college, but our kind of get here was to say, look at all these colleges, appeals are possible. So that's hopefully helpful. And then kind of the last thing that we'll leave you with. I'm always shocked at how many people are like, but we don't want to, we don't want to rub them the wrong way. And again, we're not talking about being a jerk. I'm talking about nice people saying we don't even want to ask for more. The worst thing that these guys can do is say, sorry, that's the best we can do, take it or leave it. Right. And they're not going to say you guys are a pain in the ass, we're taking money away, or you guys are a pain in the ass, your kid's not coming here. That's not on the table. So this is a advocate for yourself, right? Advocate for yourself. And that's all you're doing here. And this is a very normal part of the process. The colleges like it. Of course, they hate it. Okay. Of course, they don't like it, but too bad, right? You guys have to advocate for yourselves here. And this is something I say in almost every conversation. I promise you, you guys need this money more than these guys do. All right. So that's got to be the mentality. All right, Peggy.
I'm going to take over
I
here.
think so.
So
Oh,
as Matt
let me set the stage here, and then I'll let you get a little bit more granular. So this is just some of the things that we're seeing on the horizon in terms of these changes that are coming or have started already. So federal direct student loans, Peggy's going to go into details, but there are talks of these being changed, reduced, or going away. Same with PLUS loans. That's the federal direct parent borrowing program, right? That's the federal loan for parents that want to send their kids to college. At a minimum, this is going to be harder to qualify for. It is a real possibility that the amounts you can borrow through this get reduced or the program gets eliminated. They are already making significant changes to the repayment options of this federal plus loan. That's already started. And they're not good. They're not good for borrowers. They're just less flexible, and that's being polite. So which means the private market is being very much invited to kind of completely take over this space. They've already had a meaningful presence, but they might be the only player in town moving forward. And there's two ways that this can go. What we hope for is that they compete with one another. May the best rate and the best loan win, and we benefit as consumers. That's the optimistic viewpoint. That's the what can go right viewpoint. What we're concerned about with here is it because at the end of the day, there's like 6 major players, 6 major banks here. Is that there's some type of collusion and they give a little wink wink to each other, and we don't benefit as consumers, and the rates and the amount we're going to have to borrow goes up a decent amount. The repayment terms are not in our favor. I mentioned the forgiveness program specifically as it comes to federal loans already stopping or becoming less flexible, going away altogether. At a minimum, that they are paused. And the last kind of note here that we're hovering over, and this is brand new, is that Pell Grants may be in jeopardy. That is free money that's given from the federal government to families with a really low SAI, families with a really low income and assets. I am still working on my silver lining for that. I don't have it yet, right? I don't have the silver lining for that one if it's to come to fruition, but this is happening in real time really fast. So we're doing anytime we're in front of any stakeholders here, which is you all getting ready to go to college, we're trying to provide some education. We're going to continue to do that. As a matter of fact, I'll grab the link. We're doing a big State of the Union next what is it, next Thursday, right, Peggy?
Thursday.
I'll grab that link and I'll share it because we're doing a big, all right, here's everything that's going on. Let us cut through the noise for you. And more so than that, what's actionable, right? What should you be doing? What should you not be doing, etc. But it's important that we talk about this loan stuff because you guys are going to have to make these decisions over the next couple of months. And we want to give you that foundation now because this year is different than it ever has been.
Yeah, and this is so fluid. So what we're saying today literally could be different tomorrow. We're surmising on some of this stuff. Pell Grants are severely underfunded, so they need to do something. So when you're thinking about borrowing, it's just like everything else in this process. It's not, hey, every family, this is your strategy. Just like building an affordable list, every student's different, every family's situation is different. So just that might be obvious to you, but you know, it's not just a one size fits all. You also want to make sure your borrowing isn't out of control. I said at the beginning, I'm the budget queen, right? It's like sometimes there's conversations with your kids around, yeah, that's too much money to borrow. This is what it's going to mean for you later on when you start your next chapter of hopefully being on your own and off the dole. You want to think about that when you're going through this process. And actually, in our software, we can show you what loans look like and what repayments are over 10 or 25 years. So you can actually put numbers to some of the decisions that you might be contemplating in a few months. So high level, we're not just going to discuss all of these. I'm going to hit one of them, but these are the different types of loans that are out there. I'm going to talk about the direct federal student loan in a minute. Matt touched on that. The Direct Plus loan, like he said, that's for parents from the federal government. One parent applies. Right now, it's pretty easy to get. I've got mixed feelings about that loan. There's also the private student loan. And the reason why I have quotes around the word student is because there's a cosigner. So you're on the hook unless you're released down the road, and that's a spec of that loan. You're on the hook just as much as your child. So to me, it's not a student loan. It's a family loan, or whoever the cosigner is involved. There's state loan programs. We're going to get in the weeds on all this stuff. We do a webinar just about loans and 529s and how to pay the bill. This is just high level. And then sometimes colleges have loans. And then on the right here, the alternative, the loan options, home equity, 401k loans, loans between families, and life insurance. So just high level, those are the options when you're looking, when you get to this point where you've maximized what you're getting from the colleges through appeals, and then you're starting to look at this step in the process. So just real quick, these federal direct student loans, your child is eligible for these. All you need to do is get that FAFSA in. The government, at least right now, is encouraging kids to go further with their education. So they are the only ones on it. They're building a credit history. It's under their social security number exclusively. If you have need, you can get what's called a subsidized student loan. Government pays the interest on that until 6 months after graduation. This is in place right now. I'm not a Vegas girl, but if I was a betting person, I would think this could very well go away. It could all be the unsubsidized version, which means it's a regular loan. When it gets dispersed, you start paying interest on the disbursement, just like any loan that we all take out. But right now it exists. You can see the maximum amount of subsidized loans you can get for each year of school. That totals $19,000. You have to have financial need to get that. And then they'll always throw in another 2,000 of unsubsidized. And you see the totals on the right. So it totals $27,000. In my opinion, that's a reasonable amount of debt for almost any student. My daughter graduated with a bachelor's in social work. If she had taken out all those loans, even with a lower salary coming out, she could have afforded to pay these off. This is not our student debt crisis, 27,000 each person. It's when people get into much more. This interest rate will reset in May for your kids that are going to college this fall. So the rate right now is 6.53 for this school year. It should go down because the Fed has ticked down interest rates a few times. Now they're holding it steady. I don't see them lowering it, and hopefully they don't tick it up between now and May. So it should go down, but I don't know if it's going to go down a whole lot, but it's a fixed rate. So that's nice. You don't have to worry about, you don't have interest rate risk over the time when your child's in school. These are use it or lose it. So you really want to look at your 4-year cash flow when you're planning and not say, oh, I got 529s to cover the first 2 years. You don't take this and then you're like, I wish I had those good interest rate loans where my child's building credit freshman and sophomore year. I want to go back and get them. You can't do that. So definitely plan it out before you decide not to take these. So that's the one, that's the main one that we want to talk about. And to Matt's point, stick with us because it's a changing world. It's a changing world. For the last 2 years, it's been a changing world around FAFSA, right? FAFSA was Crazyville, and now we've got the Crazyville that we have, life is life. That's what happens. But it's stick with us around all things. He put in our State of the Union. Tune in there. We'll give you even more insight, which next week could be totally different than what I said today. So you're muted, bud.
Here's the firm recommendation here, and I'll put this in the chat, right?
Oh, I can grab it.
At a minimum, book 15 minutes with Murph, right? Or somebody on our team. The chat's right here. You have to book the meeting by Friday by 2/28. You have 2 weeks to actually meet, but you have to book it by 2/28 just because our kind of bandwidth issues here. So, but this is what we'll talk about. I mean, again, Murph's going to get kind of a high level. All right, what college are we talking about? Even if you don't have the offer yet, learn a little bit more about your situation. Then he's going to very quickly be able to assess, hey, can we help you? If we can, what does that look like, right? And what it looks like is we're always going to want to review the FAFSA and the CSS profile. On average, roughly 3/4 of those, 75%, get submitted with a mistake that ends up costing families money or impacting the SAI. So even if you're really savvy with those things, it's really easy to make a mistake. How did you list the value of your primary residence? How did you list your business, right? You know, what family in a divorce separated situation completed the FAFSA of the CSS profile? So many families include their home equity on the FAFSA because it says and other real estate. They don't read the fine print that says excluding your primary residence, right? That's just on the CSS profile. Or you accidentally included retirement money, things like this. So we want to roll up our sleeves and dig into what you presented to these colleges, because oftentimes that's the first place we'll find some ammunition here. Then we're obviously look at the offer, right? What did they come back with? And then we're going to be the one that kind of drags you through this appeal process. This be through admissions? Should it be through the financial aid office? Is it both? Right. And then again, what is that strategy? Because the level of sophistication, we can draw a straight line to whether or not it's going to be successful. Right. So this is something that our ROI is arguably the most palpable. And actually, as I'm thinking of this, you know what slide we should have shown Murph is that slide that you came up with recently. We'll have to make sure, Peg, you have to make a note that shows the difference between taking kind of loan A versus loan B, and a 2% difference in how impactful the amount of money that you actually end up paying back ends up being. And I share that because this year more than ever, okay, full stop, it's going to be the wild, wild west in terms of student and parent loans. So that is something that again, it's less sexy. I know everybody right now, as you should be. This is not a disparaging comment, but you're just thinking about, all right, where are we going? What's it going to cost? How do we get, save it a little bit? But ultimately, the biggest expense for a lot of families ends up being the loan that they take, right? When we spread that out over the 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, and all of a sudden a $100,000 education ends up being a $200,000 expense, right? And those are probably modest numbers there. But if we think we can help you, Murph's gonna let you know exactly what that looks like. And you guys can allow us to take over from here, or he'll just say, look, I don't think we're going to be able to demonstrate meaningful ROI if we get involved. So just to book an hour with one of us, or he'll get you pointed in the right direction. But at a minimum, get that kind of professional assessment, gut check, before you do anything else, right? Because you're gonna at least want to talk. Even if you're going to handle this on your own, you're going to want to talk to one of us before you initiate that.
If you got, I'm just looking through the questions. If you got an award and you're like, that isn't right, my family contribution, we can help you with that too. You might have made a mistake on the forms. It's the CSS that you're referencing in your question. It's crazy, right? So we can help with that, because that you might still be appealing, but the first step would be, hey, I made an error. This is the error I made. Please recalculate. And that could change your package, and then we can look at the package and say, all right, yeah, now we're going to appeal now that they've updated your package based on getting the form correct.
And let me just clarify here, guys, because I know it is a little confusing. You just have to book your meeting by Friday, 2/28. You don't have to hold it by 2/28 because I think Murph's calendar is completely booked on Friday, because we're speaking with underclassmen on Thursday and Friday. So you can meet, next week or the following week, but you have to just book it by Friday, right? And again, and then you can meet next week or thereafter. Okay. Yeah, and look at the state schools in general, guys, the state flagship universities, they're the hardest in terms of successful appeals. Unless we have something that's very tangible, right? There was this job loss, there was this one time income spike or distribution, right? But if we don't have like firm ammunition, the state flagship universities are the hardest to appeal with successfully, right? In most cases. Does that mean it doesn't happen? Absolutely not, right? Mike Kinderman on our team, he's the director of scholarships at the University of Oklahoma. Not surprisingly, big state flagship universities, that's his sweet spot, right? Because that's his first language, right? So he does know at least how to put you in a position to have some success there. At those, again, state flagship universities that are historically just the hardest because it's hard to have that leverage when they're so popular, and if you don't go there, there's 10,000 people waiting behind you, type of deal. Marv, Peggy, did we miss anything else here?
No, I think you hit it. I mean, this part of the process, in my opinion, seeing this happen year after year is the biggest ROI right here with appeals. You spend whatever you spend, and we can't guarantee, obviously. And that's why meeting with Murph is super important, because he's going to be honest. He'll look at something and say, yeah, the odds here are low for these reasons, if that's the case, right? But it's working with us on appeals. One, it takes it off your plate. Two, we've been doing it for years and years, and we know specific schools quite often. And three, it's just a huge return on investment. So,
Okay.
and Murph, nice job. I've answered like maybe 4 questions, and there's 93 answered. So he
Yeah,
has been cranking this morning
there you have.
or this afternoon, wherever you are in the country. So
Yeah, nice job, Murph. Obviously, you guys get to see a guy knows what he's talking about a little bit.
Somebody's asking for the booking link again. Here, let me grab that.
Yeah, and and this is important to remember, and I didn't mention this, but I kind of mentioned in passing here, right? That we got this whole team of experts, right? We talk every single day on Slack. We meet as a team, a few times a week as well. And so this hive mentality is really helpful for these appeals, right? So all the time, Murph will tell you this, Peggy will tell you this, I'll tell you this. Like we had, one of our advisors, I'm trying to think that what was yesterday? Was it, I don't know what it was, Vassar, Vanderbilt, whatever the college was, right? Like, hey, here's the situation that I have going on at, U Chicago. And all of a sudden, we have 8 people jumping in saying, hey, here's best practices. Here's my experience there, right? Again, we have these guys that are at MIT, at Harvard, and JP used to be at USC. So we have folks that are currently on that side of the desk or formerly were on that side of the desk that just kind of gives us that inside baseball that we're able to leverage, right? So even though you might be working with Murph or Jason, right, and that's your point of contact, you have kind of the experience and expertise of us as a larger team here that are collaborating and trying to make it happen for you guys. So I think that's noteworthy. All right, and then let me just again, I will share this. Where did this State of the Union? If tune in if you didn't register already next Thursday, March 6th at 7 Eastern time. Even if you can't make it again, you'll get the recording like usual. We're also doing something. Our team's working really hard to have these kind of department education toolkits, and there's class specific. So if you're class 2025, or if you're an underclassman, or if you have kids in college, like what's your kind of what do you have to be doing, right? Like what's your so anyways, I think that's gonna be a nice deliverable that we're excited about for anybody that registers. So even if you can't make it, if nothing else, sign up for that.
Yeah, and I put the Murph's direct link in the chat again too, because there was some Q&A and in the chat, so it is right there.
Okay. All right, y'all have a great rest of your afternoon, morning, day, regardless of where you are. Congrats on the acceptances so far. Obviously, we're saw a bunch of awesome schools that we're trying to do even better with, and fingers crossed for those of you that are still waiting.
All right, have a good one, everybody. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.